Welcome to Turn Extension, a supplemental podcast for the Advanced Maneuvers YouTube channel.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Turn Extension. I am Tony, or Polar Bear Cub on the forums.
Hey everybody, it's Kevin, Dowdark on the forums.
Hey everybody, it's Devin, Cutthroat Cure on the forums.
And today we're going to be doing a new player segment. So I'm going to pass it over to Kevin and take it away.
Yeah, so this is going to be kind of a what was your first army, or how did you get across to your first army? We'll just call it my first army. And I want to kind of to start us off, I want to delve into how we got to the first army we ever played. Now, I personally have played multiple armies because I am a sus little flutter by. I will be like, oh, shiny, and then float off to some new faction. I promise you, even though currently right now I'm frustrated with the new Hordes faction, you'll probably see me play it at some point on the channel because it'll be shiny. But when I first came into the game, I was a convert from 40K, and I came in and I started looking at things and looking at stores, and I went through a demo game, which was extremely horrible. My demo game into my first exposure to Warmachine and Hordes was a demo game with the PG from the store that Tony was the PG of at the time. And I played with Gorton and 2 spray gun bunnies, and he played with P. De Negra, back in Mark II, P. De Negra with Nightmare and Deathjack as his battle group.
Hold on, was this Matt?
I might have been.
It sounds like something Matt would do.
I was just like, I got my butt handed to me at the top of 2, and he's like, that's how you play the game, and walked away. And I was like, So I sort of wandered over to where I knew the Warmachine and Horde stuff was, and I was going through. And for those who don't know, my very first faction was Khador, which is a lot of people's first faction, and probably for the same reason as mine. Is I'm going through the different displays, I'm like, oh look, the blue guys, and they've got a big dude and 2 little dudes. Well, the little dudes suck because my demo game just showed me the little dudes suck. I need the big dudes because he had 2 big jacks, and those guys whooped my tail. So I looked through all the army box, and lo and behold, I came to Khador, and it had a chick on the front of it with this awesome looking hammer and 2 big dudes, and went, oh well, this is clearly the best this is the best box to start with. This is the army I'm going to play with, the big stompy robots. So I ended up picking up Khador because at a glance during my demo game, I was like, big jacks are the thing. Like, it's called Warmachine, so clearly this game must be all about these huge, big, stompy robots, and Khador must be a faction that's all about huge, big, stompy robots in Mark II.
That's pretty
Needless
good.
to say, I found out very soon after that was not true, and my first army switch happened a couple months later, and I switched to Trollbloods. But so Devin, could describe to me your first, like, what was your first army?
So when you just told me your story, it was basically a carbon copy version of what happened to me. I will skip over it a little bit, but when Mark I was out, there was a group of people that had started playing at my local game store, and I came in, and I just remember, this is before Hordes had even released, and I remember seeing there was this like necro group of people that, absorb souls and put them into these giant steam-powered jacks, and I was all about that. So I picked up the Crix Battle Box, and I actually went to the first demo day that the PG that was currently there at the time held, and basically it was a complete game of, hi, let's put your models down, this is how you put your models down, and now I'm going to proceed to beat your shit in for the next 3 games. I learned absolutely nothing about the game. I actually felt like what I had chosen as a faction wasn't good. And, I looked over at the guy, and I'm not really one to, turn around and grab something new because, it wasn't working for me. It just turned me off the game completely. It was my first kind of taste of Warmachine. Fast forward to Mark II. I for a number of years, kind of got burned out on it, went into fantasy, was getting burned out on it. Mark II had just come out, and a new PG, and some of my friends were running a journeyman league and recommended that I try playing in it. So I looked through the new Hordes factions because, they weren't first started playing, and I like giant monsters. I actually, and this is going to come as a surprise, but the first faction that I chose was actually Scorn. Scorn was going to be my first faction to play, and I was all about the elephants. I just thought it was super sweet. I love elephants in general, but I just like these giant titans that are just beaten into submission. And the only reason I don't play Scorn to this day is because I had a good friend who's utility ape on the forums, and I really wanted to convince him to play with our group and pick a faction. And he's the kind of sometimes a special snowflake that likes to play the faction that no one else is playing. And the first faction he chose, of course, was Scorn. That if I tried to play Scorn, he wasn't going to play. So I just decided, well, my secondary choice, or another choice of a faction that I really liked, but we already had somebody that was currently playing that faction, were Trollbloods. And honestly, it was the best decision I had made. To this day, I'm still a diehard Trollblood fan, and I have played them. I've played them since the release of Mark II. So I like it. I really, really enjoy it.
So what about you, Tony?
It sounds like mine was a lot like your guys. So the first time I was ever interested in the game was way back in Mark 1. And one of my friends, he picked up the game, and he always was really big into picking up different miniature games, and he ended up showing me and another friend how to play the game, but he didn't tell me that if my caster died, that I would lose the game. So it was turn 1. It was a 3-way game, and I walked forward. I had Vlad, because I was playing Kador, because that's what he had in his bag. And I had 2 jacks. I think I had the Juggernaut and whatever, another jack. Can't remember what the other one was. Might have just been 2 Juggernauts, actually. And he killed me top of turn 2. And that was my first introduction to the game. But I ended up getting into Signar because my other friend who was playing the game, him and I were talking about different things. And as we were going through the book looking at it, I fell in love with Kane. And Kane was kind of the whole reason why I wanted to play the game, because I loved his background story. So, because I had never played a miniature model game beforehand. So that's kind of how I got introduced to it.
Well, so, it sounds like we have a torrid tale of abuse, misdirection, and basically the 3 of us just stumbling into the faction that we played. But that's not necessarily going to be how everybody comes across the game. A lot of people, come about it different ways. Either they're transplants from a different game system, or they're new, or whatever. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of role play. I'm going to be the saucy French maid. You two will be the college kids that are pool washing, and you're going to help me understand what it is that I'm feeling in my body.
I think I need an adult.
Can we have at least one pizza involved?
All right, so maybe we won't do that kind of role play.
I don't know.
What we're going to do is, you two are both PGs, so this is kind of something that you normally go through. So for somebody who hasn't ever gone to a store, or maybe they go to a store and their PG's never around, or maybe even the store doesn't have a PG, let's step through a couple examples, and let's see how you might lead people down the path of choosing their first faction.
Let's do it.
For you guys? All right. So in this scenario, I am brand new to tabletop gaming. So I come into your store and I'm looking around, and I came to the store because I'm a Magic player, and I'm looking around and I'm like, oh, I remember my friends talking about this game, and it's got cards to it, so maybe it's just like Magic. And I come up to you and you run me through a demo game, and even though, Tony, you're the worst PG in the world, somehow I still get hooked on the game. Where do I go from there? Like, I have never, ever played a tabletop game before. How do I choose my first faction?
So usually what I do is after I'm done playing the demo game, even beforehand, I talk about kind of the story and a little bit about the factions. Then afterwards, after we play the game, and clearly they've won, because as I was at least told when I first came into the game, as a PG, if you are ever demoing it out, make sure they win, because it makes it more memorable and it hooks them into the game faster. Because nobody likes losing their very first time playing the game. It discourages majority of the individuals from ever playing the game again. So clearly, whatever your name was at the time, Brandon or Brian, I really should have remembered. afterwards, I would walk through the steps of, kind of asking you, well, what type of things do you like? What interests you? Are you more of a, fantasy? Do you like necro? Are you about it? Just kind of pulling out what makes you excited, and then
So
pushing from there.
when I was playing in Magic the Gathering, I loved the Ravnica deck, and I was a huge proponent for red green, just hard aggro push. That was like every time I used to stomp my opponents, I used to love the crowd, just not giving them any recourse. I would just maul over them, and they'd have no chance.
So I'm a little rusty on my Mark III stuff, but I feel like if we're playing a game of Warmachine, I would probably start pushing them a little bit more towards either the Signa or Khador. Because those two, to me at least, I would think that those two are a little bit more aggressive. But also, before I would tell them that, I would actually open up the book, kind of walk them through them, show them what models that they have, and not telling them any specifics like, oh, this is good, this is bad, but like, hey, this is, some of the models that they have, these look kind of cool, like what, in kind of gauging your reaction to see if, that face lights up or if you're like, and then I would kind of move to the next one.
So you're using imagery to define my selection?
For me, at least what I've done a lot of time is I like to use imagery at first because there's a lot of great visuals in the game. I want to see if that's what you like. But Devin, what is your take on it?
See, I kind of go completely the opposite manner. Like, I don't tell them anything about the story because I believe, like, I can definitely say I'm very biased when it comes to that. And I just believe, like, the Signarin dogs and the rest of those other sub-factions that aren't of the Kith and Creel are just kind of fucking us over. So I feel like that comes out when I tell people about the story because it usually starts with the hard and loyal trolls are getting fucked over by everybody. And so, but no. So what I do is when I have a new player come in, I try to keep one of every demo of every battle box with me so that I can give them a wide range. But I feel like it's a little bit easier for me. You were playing Magic, Kevin. There's got to be something that's drawing you away from card games and into miniatures games. And in my opinion, that would probably be the miniatures. So that's actually where I start. I actually like to pull out, depending on where I'm at, because I've definitely done demos at different stores. So if the store has a very good selection, I will pull the new player over to the models first and just kind of let them look through it. And I will ask them to pick like 5 models that they are absolutely just like crazy about. And those 5 models, if there's any sort of like in the same faction, so, maybe they go over and they pick out Behemoth and they're just like, man, that looks awesome. He looks crazy good. Then I will start drawing them towards Khador, pull out the Khador demo box and let them just play around with it. And that's kind of what I go because I believe that you're only going to be happy with your faction if you're happy with the using, therefore the miniatures and stuff. And since I'm a hobby aspect of it, I believe like you're going to paint something or actually take more love if you actually like what you have at the end of the day. So no matter where your faction falls on the ends of the story, you're going to kind of work for you if you like that faction in general. So that's where I've always kind of come with. I think picking out, especially if you're a new player, picking out models that really speak to you or look really cool is actually going to enhance your gaming experience by 100%.
So as I mentioned, I'm from the Magic the Gathering area, and I'm part of the one I liked the most was the Ravnica deck, and I played red green. So a lot of times I was playing the Gruul clans. So I'm looking at them like, what, the Gruul cans look pretty cool, and I want to smash people's face. I want to charge across the field and smash people's faces. And it looks like there's these like Cyclops things in this red faction over here on the Horde side that has, these beasts and stuff like that. So they kind of look like what I used to play in Magic the Gathering, sort of. So that's the faction that I want to go to, right? Like at what point in time does all right, so let's take another example then. We'll get off of the Magic the Gathering player. I'm a 40K player, and I want to transition. A bunch of my friends are playing Warmachine and Hordes now, and I want to play over. And I love sci-fi. I love sci-fi to death. It's like one of the main reasons why I played 40K. And I play the game, and you walk me over, and you're like, aesthetically, which ones do you like? And I'm like, none of them are really sci-fi or anything like that, but I'm gonna try these ones over here. These little machine men guys. These what the faction box says, Convergence of Cirrus on the front of it. I've never played your game before, but this looks cool. Like, is there any point in time where you go, that may not be a good faction for you to start with, because Convergence can be very complicated for a brand new to the game person to pick up?
So I always, anytime someone wants to go Convergence, Mercenaries, or Minions, I make sure I put a caveat in there saying, hey, just so you know, with Convergence, it's a limited release. They've been out for almost 3 years now, and they've only gotten this selection of models. Privateer Press has strictly said, hey, this faction will very rarely be expanded on, if ever. You know, it's a very slow process if they ever come out. With Mercenary and Minions, I tell them there's a wide variety. It's a lot easier now in Mark III because there's no longer the packs and the contracts, so that makes things a lot easier. But those are the only three I generally say, you might want to watch out. Any other time, if they're saying they want to play Scorn, Signar, Crix, whatever, I am down with whatever they want to play, because I think I think discouraging someone from the beginning, telling them that, oh, this model sucks, I think it just puts them in a more negative mindset.
See, my first thing to do is anytime somebody actually says to me that they want to play Convergence, and especially if you were a sci-fi fan, I would actually try and push you more into Ret, just because they do have like a sort of a, you know, like their jacks are very sci-fi-ish. But I mean, I do make it very clear exactly what to expect. So, you know, depending on the game they're playing or whatever, I try to, you know, like very, very heavy caveat of, you know, this is a faction that is rather new. It's very limited. If you really like everything on it, you know, by all means, go ahead, play this faction. But, you know, if this is your, you know, if you're somebody who's looking for something that's going to be easy to learn on, this is not where you want to start.
So you kind of picked up on something, and I want to stretch on a little bit. When you said, Tony, you had mentioned when somebody's new to the game, we're not talking an individual who's picking up a new faction. They're brand new. They have not played Warmachine and Hordes before, beyond the little 30-minute demo that you probably just gave them. If you mentioned that you may try and make it clear to them that it's not a starter faction. We'll use that term, starter faction, for Mercs, Minions, and Convergence. If an individual is dead set because aesthetically that is the one that they really, really like, is there anything that they can do as a person or as a new player to overcome the hurdle that you see before them? Like, is there any tips that you can give that's like, okay, these are the things you really need to watch out for, and you're going to need to spend a lot of time doing this in order to be good out the gate with this faction?
You know, specifically with Convergence, because I've dealt with this before, a lot of times in Mark II was, if I would tell them, give them the spiel, hey, just let you know this is a very limited faction, and they're a lot trickier to play because, with I can't remember what the fuck it's called now.
Worst PG ever.
I know.
Tony, tell them about all the elegant ways you can work the cock.
I can't remember what their ability is. Induction. Shit. Okay.
He's fumbling with the cock.
Wow.
He's just throwing it around all over the place.
The cock is just everywhere. Anyway, so I talked to them, about the complexities of induction. If they're dead set on that, then my next step, which I feel is really important, is encouraging them to go with it. Talking to them about, all right, well, this is what you're going to look for. Your biggest issues that you're going to have, where not only do you have to learn the normal rules of the game, you also have to worry about induction. And with, I would, obviously with them, the one model I would suggest with Convergence, I would tell them about the Corollary, because it's just one model that I think is very important to the Convergence arsenal. So it's the only model I'd really suggest for them, but I would make sure to let them know up front, is because with Convergence, how complex the faction is, you have a stronger possibility of losing more, because there's more pitfalls you have to deal with, because you're learning the basic rules of the game, you're learning about the charges, all of the intricacies, and then, hey, you're also learning about induction and everything else that involves with this.
So what about Minions and Minions and Mercs? You mentioned them as well. Like they would be stumbling blocks for new players. What's the tips for a new player who's like, no, I really, really want to play with all of these gators because they look amazing?
And this thing is, I feel like that it might not be as big of a stumbling block with Mark III. But still with them, I would let them know is, hey, that's fine. If you want to play with the gears, it's great. I would more so walk them through what the difference between gators and pigs and what they can use war beast wise, because I think that's going to be the biggest thing. Because I don't want someone picking up Rask and then picking up a like Splatterboar.
Rask is going to run these 4 gun bores.
Yeah, and I don't want them to fall into that pitfall because I don't want them to blow money that for amount that they're not wanting to use it. Because they really want to use Rask, those battle board stuff might have to take a back seat for.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here because you just actually pointed out something I didn't even think about. So I turn around and I'm like, you know what? I hear you. I understand, and I appreciate you giving me the advice for, watching out what I'm going to do. But I really want to play Mercs. I see the boxes for all the other factions, but I don't see for Mercs or Minions. What should I start with? Like, can you give me an example of a good battle group box for these guys?
So when it comes to models I don't know, I do not give any type of my advice for it. That's usually when I'll push them towards, hey, some things you want to look at for is maybe go look at the forum, see what, ask for a new player. A lot of the sub forums.
No, you don't understand. I have $100 in my hand right now. I want to give money to my local gaming store. What should I buy?
Well, luckily, I have my friend Devin
the easy
here.
way.
And Devin's going to tell you.
See, I go the easy way. I basically, if it's Minions, Mark III is a little bit different, but if they're really big into pigs, I always direct them right at Carver. I think Carver is a real simple toolbox. He's a lot of fun, and he's got a really cool story, and he's awesome as a miniature. If they're going Gators, then I go with Barnabas, just because you're talking about a soul-pulling voodoo doctor, Gator that's just super sweet, and he also is a very toolbox caster that can be a lot of fun. They're usually very available and they look good on the table. Mercs are where I have a little bit more of an issue. The simplest way that I go with that is if you are seriously interested in starting Mercs as your primary starter faction as a new player, and nothing I said has directed you away from that, and trust me, my efforts would have been extremely, extremely motivating. Tell you to pick the caster that you like or that is available at the store if you have to have something that day, and then basically you build off that. And I mean, I many times will go out of my way, and if someone says, hey, I like Gorton, then I will go on and and as I said, a lot of this is in Mark II. I haven't had too many people that have gone with mercenaries since Mark III has been out and have started the game. A little caveat is that my experience with this is very much Mark II, but I would basically go on to the forums, pull up what I see people talking about. The forums have some really cool information that says they have areas that talk about each caster and toolbox, their toolbox, how good they are, how they work, and then they usually have a list of things that work very well with them. And I have recommended so many people to that, and I have helped people actually buy models just simply off that material, just because it's been so helpful. I know the troll one was a big one for me when I first started. And yeah, of course you have to take some of it with a grain of salt, but usually the people that write those guides try to give everything the benefit of the doubt. Always been very helpful. So I mean, if everything I've said hasn't away from mercenaries and you are set on mercenaries, then there's probably something about mercenaries that's pulling you aesthetically, and then I'm just going to try and figure out what that is and then go for that.
Oh, well, that's easy. I really like this guy that's got all the arms. He kind of reminds me of Spider-Man Doc Octopus. He's got, all these arms, and he's kind of floating there, and I think that's really cool. And I'm going to have him run this big, giant thing that looks like a giant crab, colossal thing. So I'm going to have the guy with all the arms running that. So that's going to be awesome.
Cephalix. Can Cephalix run I would assume you're talking about the Earthbreaker?
If Cephalix could run the Breaker, you would see a lot more Cephalix players.
See, this is why. I thought you were trying to snag me up, but I wasn't sure if they could run it.
See, I thought you were talking about convergence again.
So what ends up happening if you have a situation where you have somebody who comes up to you and he's like, you know what? Well, there's two scenarios. So I come up to you and I'm like, thanks for the demo game, but I'm really, really torn because I'm an old Halo player and I love the good old fashioned red versus blue, and I'm really torn. I don't know if I want to go with the blue guys or the red guys. Help me. So when I say help me, I mean help me.
I at that point I would tell him that I would choose one or the other. I think both options are good. That's really what it is, because I'm not gonna, because if you tell them one way and they don't like it and they thought the other way was better, they're gonna blame you.
Well, but it's going to be your fault. Like a week later, I'm going to come in and be like, fuck that Tony guy. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. I was trying to shoot with my red guys and they were deviating everywhere.
Which is why I still claim the title of worst PG ever.
And this is why I always direct people to the miniatures, because it doesn't matter. Like you could have some awesome looking miniatures, and even if they come over and say like, man, the rules for this model sucks, and I'll be like, oh, well, at least you have a really good looking model. Like I feel like that works a little bit because rules change, like there's things that were in Mark II that were absolutely garbage, Trollkin Skinner, that are actually kind of okay in Skinner. And, so you can't always go off of what's good because, one moment you're ravaging the world and, with your eyeless sight, and the next moment you can't even see through trees.
All right. So, and just to clarify, I want to make a clarification of something because I'm actually surprised that you're referencing it. You both have said if there was confusion or if I needed more guidance or something like that, I should go to the forums. And I super appreciate Privateer Press giving us a place where we can talk about things. I also recognize that the PP forums can be full of venom pits. So is referring to, if I'm trying to help a friend into the game, is referring them to the forums the right thing to do? Or is it more of a, let me take you to the forums and we go to it together?
Usually it's Mufasa Simba style. Like I'll lead you in there and show you where you need to go, and I'll tell you about the dark areas that exist there. As I said, most of the times I will push them right into just the guide because it's a static entry that already exists, and it's already who usually tries to avoid the negativity of things. They usually won't mark those to stay around if they're super negative. So most cases that if you look at the guides that they have pinned, they're actually full of really good information that Privateer Press supports. Therefore, the reason they pinned it.
To get something sticky does take a relatively long process.
You made the Mufasa Simba reference, and all of a sudden I thought of that meme where they're sitting on the hilltops and Simba's the kid, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Kevin,
Simba's
you have 2 kids.
Whatever. Simba's like, what's over there in the dark spot? Mufasa's like, that's the Crix forums. Don't ever go there.
See, I was actually thinking of a good one of when Mark III came out, and it was the same exact picture, and he said, what's that dark spot that black area over there? That's the forums. We never go there.
I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I love the community that we have, but there are just some of those threads are dripping with venom, and I would hate to have somebody brand new to the game get that as their first exposure.
I mean, honestly, the thing about the forums that a lot of people have to realize is that it is very opinion based. Like what you're on there asking for is the opinions of others, and that's it. This is not fact. Other than infernal rulings and such like that, which I can definitely suggest if you're picking up a new caster and stuff, and you're curious about some of the rules, always check the infernal rulings to see if there was and the erratas to see if there was anything different with your caster. Now, this should be much issue with this going forward since Privateer Press is going to be releasing new cards every year, from what I understand. But I mean, if you're a new player and you don't have War Room and you haven't spent the money to get the deck on your device, having that card in your hand and playing and learning how to play a model a certain way without current errata can be devastating.
All right, so let's go through, because we're going to run out of time here soon. I want to take a step through. Tony, we're going to start with you. Give me in 2 sentences or less, what is Signar?
Super awesome electricity and fucking badass old people.
All right. Devin, what is Menoth?
Menoth is a bunch of religious zealots who believe that they're right, everybody else is wrong, and they should be purged with fire.
All right. Tony, Crix.
Cricks are a lot of necro, bringing back undead, zombies, and really dark models. Sorry, I'm modding.
Confident on that one.
No, sorry, I'm modding as well right now.
Devin, Kador.
Big stompy robots that like to beat things with their fists and shoot big guns that don't always hit.
I would like to trim that to say big stompy robots that like to beat things with axes, because look at the range. Tony, Retribution.
Retribution, futuristic elves that are pretty pissed off that their god died and blames humans for it, or gods died.
Devin, Mercs.
Bunch of people that I don't understand.
Tony, Convergence.
People that have decided to get rid of their bodies to try to appease their god and do a lot of awesome things with focus.
Devin, Trolls.
Douchebags.
A hardy faction
Oh my
that
God.
works together to build a better life for their community
Oh my
when
God.
they've been oppressed by every other fucking faction.
Oh my God.
So apparently he missed the part about 2 sentences or less.
Oh my God.
Tony, Scorn. Oh, okay. I guess there was 2 sentences.
You could just use one of their animus and just say train wreck.
Oh.
So that leaves us with Devon Circle.
Oppressing tree huggers that had some weird stories with some wolves. There's some furry business in there. I don't even know.
And then last but not least, Legion of Everblade.
Sorry. Whoa.
Undead?
God damn it.
Worst PG ever.
I am the worst.
The word you were looking for.
Oh man. Okay, let me try this one more time. So, Legion of Everblade, dragon spawn that are trying to kill the god that helped make them.
Okay, so with that rounding up all the factions, the last part I want to go into is what are the 3 things you would recommend? I'm brand new to the thing. I've picked up my battle box. What is my next purchase? Where do I go to learn about my faction? And what is the next upgrade, next thing, next non-model related thing I need to get? Starting with Devin.
So the first thing you need to do, first purchase, it depends on if you're more into the hobby or gaming side. So I think that would differ for me. So if you were hobby, I would definitely and such like that. But if you're really into the gaming, I would try and find maybe the one, like for trolls, it would be the Rune Bear. I think he's a super good support piece that's efficient but also inexpensive to purchase. So I would try and do that for every faction. So that would be the first thing that I would suggest to purchase if you're just into playing. The second thing I would suggest somebody to do to learn about their faction is read all of their cards, start to finish on interested in. I would also make sure that I hit a subscription for advanced maneuvers for some of the battle report content they have so I can watch how those are played. 3, I'm trying to minimize it to what I would suggest if you were a new player. Say get as many games in and really get involved with the community, because 90% of the time, if you really get in there with the gaming group that plays on a regular basis at your store, they're going to be able to help you, if anything, just by showing you what other things do and explaining to you what you could have done that might have helped. And I think this is one of the most important things always after a game. Ask them, how did I do? What did you think? Is there anything that you think I could have done better? And my games, and 99% of the time, it leads to a really good conversation and actually helps me out.
I agree.
All right, Tony, first purchase, first place I should go, or first thing I should read, and what was the last one? Oh, first thing I need to do.
So first thing I think you should do is read more about your faction. First thing you should do is play more games before you make any more purchases. what you have right now, you should start playing that a couple times before you expand your army so you understand what those models do and then work your way up. Don't jump into a 75-point game if you've just got into the game. Start working with the 0 points and then go from there.
And the first purchase?
I would say wait until after you've played a game, then you decide what your first purchase is.
So that's all I really have. Is there anything else you guys like? Is there anything else that you think that a new player needs to be aware of or needs to do before they don't consider themselves a new player besides lose lots and lots of games?
Definitely if you're new, if you're thinking about getting into the game and you don't already know who your PG is, I think an invaluable tool that Privateer Press offers is they actually have a PG finder, and you just go in there, put your location, and it'll actually tell you all of the PG names and people that are around you and actually give you the contact information. That's super beneficial. Store, try and find, it can also help you find a store that's near you that offers the game or has somebody there that represents Privateer Press and teaching people the game. I mean, honestly, besides that, I mean, once you get into that, I mean, developing and finding a strong group of people to play with you is going to be the one thing that makes this experience and this hobby meaningful, because the connections that you make with the people, as you're spending grotesque amounts of money on tiny little bits of metal and plastic, those relationships are immeasurable. And I think that's what really develops the game for people.
That sounds good. So actually, with that being said, I'm going to cut us off because we are a little bit past time. So I want to thank everyone for listening to another episode of Turn Extension. Thank you very much.